Welcome to the Healthy Human Revolution podcast. I'm Dr. Laurie Marbas, and today I'm so honored to have Lizzie and Tony Boucher from the co-founders of Food as Medicine Australia. How are you both today?
Hey, Laurie.
Hi, Laurie. We're fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you both so much for coming, and I know we've had quite the scheduling, interesting things that I've put you guys through, and I appreciate your patience.
Thank you for having us. We're honored to be speaking with you.
Yeah, it's great to be on your podcast.
Yeah.
You guys are amazing, and I would love to share your story, which is really interesting, especially Tony and your physical challenges. Can you guys tell us how this kind of all evolved? Like, how did you find plant-based eating, and what was the whole triggers for you to start searching for different things?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'm a scientist by background, worked in senior management from quite a young age, from my mid-20s, and have lived quite a high-stress life for most of my time. And I got to work very hard, long hours. I got to age 44 and crashed and burned after a big night of drinking, actually. And that had happened to me before. I'd had
crashing and burning,
the drinking and the crashing and burning had happened before. But I had, for probably 5 years, crashed and burned 3 or 4 times a year, something like that. Had all sorts of tests done by the doctors and never found any answers. And I just assumed after a while that it was my body saying, okay, it's time to slow down and rest up. And generally 3 to maybe 5 days after that, I would come good, like normal, and go back to my normal routine. But I'd spend 3 or 5 days sleeping most of the time in bed. And this particular time when I was 44, after the drinking, I don't know if the drink had anything to do with it, but I had too much to drink without question. I woke up the next day hungover, as I would expect, but I never recovered from it. I was extremely lethargic, had extreme fatigue, just tired. And, so day 7, I felt okay. So I tried to go to work, which is an office-based, or was an office job at that time. And I lasted until about lunchtime, and it just felt like someone pulled the power plug out, and my electric charge just disappeared. So I had several sort of false starts at trying to get back, because as I say, the history was 3 or 5 days later I would come good again. It just didn't happen, and I ended up spending 4 months of my life sleeping between 14 and 18 hours a day. I really had zero quality of life. I never saw any friends. My life was quite miserable, actually, when I was awake. And I had quite a number of other symptoms, but fatigue was the main one. Brain fog, poor memory, cold feet, a whole bad breath, a whole range of quite weird sort of symptoms. Again, went and saw doctors, specialists, none of them had any answers. I had always, since my early 30s, had slightly abnormal liver function. So I had an ultrasound of the liver, and I'm sure enough I had fatty liver. I was certainly overweight, no question. I had gout from my early 30s, and high cholesterol as well. So I had been taking pro-gout to manage the gout, and I had been taking statins to manage the cholesterol. And I also had quite severe gastric reflux problems for many years, and I was taking Pariet to manage that. So I'm certainly not sure what all of those things did, although at one stage I did read about statins, and once I read the potential side effects of those, I put those aside and told the doctor that would be the last time I take those. So, look, I went and saw a naturopath, which is something I never thought I'd do as a scientist. I just kind of, my words are heebie-jeebie science, kind of thought that was a bit weird, but I did go and do that. I was desperate, and I would try anything at that point to try and get well again. Spent a lot of money with a naturopath, buying herbal supplements and vitamins and minerals. And at the time I was working on contract, so every day I didn't show up for work, I wasn't getting paid. And the naturopath was costing me at least $800 or $900 a month in visits and herbal supplements and the like. So I did that for nearly 2 years, and eventually stumbled on a book, actually, and it really was by accident that we found that. And it was actually Dr. Douglas Graham's book, The 80-10-10 Diet, which is, look, I don't strongly follow Doug Graham anymore, but the book was the trigger to help me change my life. I read the book very quickly. I'm a very slow reader, and it just had me engrossed. And I was reading parts of it to Lizzie. It just made sense to me as a scientist. The basic logic of, you know, things like the opposing thumb to pick fruit, you know, the gastrointestinal design and length, enzymes in the mouth, all of that sort of stuff made logical sense to my mind. And I said to her, look, I think I'm going to give this a try. You know, I really, as I say, was at the stage where I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. And I figured no one died from eating too many fruit and vegetables. So she was horrified at that idea, because we kind of had some sort of social life at the time. And essentially, I guess Doug Graham largely pushes raw vegan fruit eating.
Fruit and vegetables.
Fruit and salads, basically. And of course, that's relatively restrictive, or can be. So that was Lizzie's biggest fear, was having no social life and not going to restaurants
anymore. And what was
I
going to eat?
So I contemplated the whole idea for about a week or two, and eventually I just said to her, look, I'm gonna do this. I've got nothing to lose. You don't have to do it, but I'm going to give it a try and see, just see. So she basically yielded and gave in and did.
I didn't want to cook 2 different meals for the children and for me and for him, so it's easier just to.
So at that point, we had already purchased a high-powered blender, and that was the kind of trigger for this whole thing. And we basically went raw vegan overnight. It was actually Australia Day, January 26, 2014. And the very next day, all we ate was fruit and salads. And after 3 days of eating that way, honestly, I just felt like I'd never been sick. I just was jumping out of my skin with energy. This is from a person who had no energy at the time. I just felt amazing. And we have a magnetic exercise bike at home, and I jumped on that. And I just decided that it would either put me in bed for recovery, or I would be okay. And I did 15 kilometres, which at the time when I was ill would have put me in bed for probably 5 to 7 days, recovering from that, sleeping all day just to get over, recover my energy, I guess. And during the period, the couple of years that I had been sick, some days I felt better than others. And if it was a nice sunny day, I'd go for a walk. And if I walked too far, I'd be back in bed for 3 or 5 days. And the big problem at that time was that, again, every day I didn't show up for work, I didn't get paid. So it really affected my income significantly. So my whole life became about managing my energy levels to be able to go to work and every day, basically. So the quality of life was pretty much zero. Lizzie did almost everything else for me. I would get up, go to work, which involved sitting in an office most of the day, and come home, and she would do everything for me. And so my quality of life was terrible. So yeah, 3 days of eating fruit and jumping out of my skin, 15 Ks on the bike, and I could have just kept going. I sweat a lot. I didn't huff and puff, which was interesting. I used to, even for a walk, I would be, sort of heaving for breath. 3 days of eating that way, and I wasn't even puffing, riding the push bike flat out. So just amazing. Day 7, all of the meds that I mentioned, the cholesterol tablets, the statins, the pro-gout, I stopped everything. I stopped all of the supplements that I'd been taking from the naturopath. Everything I stopped on day 7, and I just got better and better and better. And so that was nearly 5 years ago. And as I was saying to you earlier in some pre-discussion, I'm almost 52, and I honestly don't believe I felt better in my recollection of my life. I feel amazing, and I feel like I'm getting better every day. I feel younger almost every day. So I used to have lots of aches and pains daily. I would be popping painkillers, like multiple painkillers, 3 or 4 times a week, just to manage shoulder and neck and headache problems while I was at work. I would be seeing chiropractors and physiotherapists to try and manage my pain in my neck and shoulders and back. All of that's disappeared as well. I haven't even taken a paracetamol, I don't think, for about 4 years. I get no pains, I get no headaches. Again, I haven't felt so good. So, yeah, amazing stuff. And that led us to start researching and researching and researching.
So you
and
have to remember
went down the rabbit hole.
When we changed, we had no knowledge whatsoever about
accidental
eating this way. We didn't understand. We had no understanding. So then we started finding all the different doctors, like Dr. Campbell. We read the China study, and then we were like, oh my goodness. So then we read Dr. Esselstyn's book, and we were like, oh my goodness.
And we watched Forks Over Knives.
Yeah, and then our minds started to just be exploding. And you know, as a registered nurse, what we're taught at university is just the complete opposite of what we now know as the truth. And, you know, we're told type 2 diabetes is incurable, and Crohn's disease is incurable, and heart disease, you'll just get multiple. I mean, all these things are just, you know, a deterioration, and then, you know, you'll eventually succumb to something like a heart attack or amputations, or you'll lose your eyesight from diabetes. And it's just not true. And it made me so angry. I was angry, really angry.
Lizzie, as a medical person, she really struggled, because it effectively meant she had to almost unlearn everything that she'd been taught and relearn. And she literally was angry.
I was so cross that all these people that I'd looked after for 27 years, you know, people dying of these things. And if only they knew, maybe they might have changed and not died. And it made me really cross. So that's why we're so passionate about doing what we're doing, because it just it's not, you know, there people are living in pain, and their quality of life is so bad, and it doesn't need to be. And it's so simple.
So 5 years on, we're studying, we're watching YouTube videos, we're watching documentaries. We've got a library full of plant-based nutrition books here at home.
DVDs. And
we've done we've helped a number of other people that were ill recover their lives back. We're highly passionate, as you can tell just from talking to us. And we're well researched now. We're not... you know, we don't have formal qualifications, I guess, in nutrition, but we're pretty knowledgeable on plant-based nutrition. And so that led us to start our Facebook page called Food is Medicine Australia. Thank you for introducing earlier, which we started only earlier this year. We've almost got 4,000 followers in about 10 months or something. So it's been quite interesting to watch. It's really just a free educational sharing page. We share a lot of healthy human revolution stuff, and some of your old podcasts and things like that. So just trying to get the message and the truth out to people. Also in our research, very early in the piece, you know, our eyes were opened widely by the animal agriculture industry, the environmental destruction that's going on with animal agriculture. And now, initially we didn't like the idea of identifying as vegan. Now we are very proud of being vegans, and we are truly vegans. We try to absolutely minimise our harm to animals and the environment, and we are quite active with local animal activism here in Perth. and proudly do that. In fact, we enjoy that, and we're probably going to miss the Cube of Truth today in the Perth City, which is a bit disappointing, but we've got this chat with you, and then we're helping a lady this afternoon with her health and her child's health. So, yeah, it's become a life of passion, I'm afraid, and it's shifted our path in life, probably.
Yeah.
I would say your trajectory has changed dramatically.
Definitely.
I'm curious.
Really sad it took me to be so sick for that to happen. That was the sad part.
Yeah.
Well, that is a story, right? So that's going to be the trigger, the emotional connection that other people are going to be enthralled with, because they're going to relate to you. For me, I didn't have so much. I had, some allergies and my thyroid got better, but I don't have the dramatic recovery story. So I think that's phenomenal. It's more powerful than an MD, because trust me, no MD that I know has become a nutritional expert without extra outside of school learning. Trust me on that.
Sure.
So don't worry about having those letters behind your name. They don't mean much.
No, we're not worried about it.
But others
as
do.
we said to you earlier, it'd be very, as much as I would like to perhaps have some letters, just for recognition purposes. I could not go and study in the mainstream educational environment, because I just know that they'll teach me conventional medicine and conventional nutrition, and I will probably fight them all the way. It won't end well if I try that. So I would fail probably, because I wouldn't answer in the way they would expect me to answer.
I think it would be challenging now, but yeah, I think it's an important thing to balance, though, traditional medicine and, your osteopathic medicine or allopathic medicine with nutrition, because there will be points. I do like to remind, people that it's not a panacea. It's close as I can get, but it's not. So there will be times that you will need certain meds. And I do want to encourage people to understand that. And it's not like we're promoting that this is some magic bullet for you, but it is in many cases. However, there are instances. And so that's an important thing to balance as well. And I agree with you about the vegan thing, right? Because there's so many unhealthy vegans, because they eat the processed food and the junk food, and people are like, I talk to people about plant-based diet, a whole food plant-based diet, and they immediately go to that freezer section and buy the Impossible Burger and the Beyond Burger. And I that is fine for now, but in transition, but this is where we're headed. So
that's right.
I think you're on the right track. I'm curious if we can step back a bit, and Lizzie, as we're seeing, you're witnessing what Tony's bringing home, and what his objectives are, and he's saying, I'm doing this. And you're like, okay, when was it that you were like, wow, okay, actually something is going on? Like, when was it was it the 3 days in? When you believed it for you? When did you finally become like, hold on a minute, something is going on?
I guess I wasn't reading any of the books. So he started reading this book, and then we got the China study book, and he started reading that, and he kept reading me excerpts, and I was listening while I was doing other things, and he'd read it to me, and I'd say, listen to this, and I'd go, oh, yeah, that's interesting. But it was so in stark contrast to what I had learned. So I was listening, but I was like, that's great. And then when he started to feel better, I was like, oh, this is interesting. And so then I think it was after that I then picked up the China study and started reading it. And then I was reading it thinking, why don't I know this? Why haven't I ever been told this? Why is this being kept from everybody? And so then we started down that rabbit hole, opened the Pandora's box, which you can't close once you open it. And we just found out all this information. And I think it was a month. And I think I was angry for about a month, actually, because I was forced to not eat what I wanted to eat. And I was angry because I was like, fruit and vegetables. What am I, can't be forever. But after about a month, because I didn't feel great when we changed, even though I wasn't sick per se, I didn't feel great. I was getting headaches. So I was like, my body was detoxifying, and And, you know, after about a month, I started to think, I think there's something in this, you know? And so that's when we found the videos. And
I like that you point out that you didn't feel good, because I think there's some people need to understand that a couple things to think about that. Number one, you were desperate because you were super sick, and then you had this dramatic recovery very quickly.
He didn't feel bad. He felt good.
Right. He was going from the bottom of the well getting better. It's like you couldn't get any much worse except dead, maybe. But for you, when some people will go through a detox phase and not feel well, headaches, fatigue. But the other thing is when you're eating strictly fruits and vegetables, you don't sometimes eat enough calories. So that's another point to remember, because I know when I first was learning how to do this, I started in 2012 as a doctor, and I was like you, I read the China study and I was angry. I was like, how many patients have I killed because I didn't know? Like, holy jeez. But what was interesting though is that in that first year, because there was nowhere really for me to learn, I found Dr. McDougall's information. He had some written stuff for physicians. Dr. Greger's site was still early on, and a little bit of PCRM. I had some PCRM stuff and Dr. Bernard, but there was not a guide for someone like myself as a physician to go like, how do I tell a patient to do this? I didn't even begin to think about all the other onion layers of social stresses and, you know, the protein stuff and the B12. I mean, I hadn't even begun to understand that. But I was like, how do I even begin to share a message with the patient? And how do I stop someone's insulin or their high blood pressure? I mean, no one tells you how to stop meds.
That's right.
There's no financial interest in telling you how to stop it, right?
There is nowhere. And so that was really fun. People would switch over to eating just fruits and vegetables in that first year, and they would come back to me and they were tired and fatigued. And I was like, what is going on? This is not what I'm reading. And I'm not feeling this way. I was eating beans and potatoes and my other things. And I think that was really important for me to learn, is like, you really need to have those other foods, those starchy vegetables and the whole grains and the beans to feel, for a lot of people to stay energized and well. I initially went, so I read Dr. Esselstyn's stuff, and I went very strict, no fat, you know, except I didn't do nuts. I didn't do avocados. I was strictly, and I got actually kind of down, and which was unusual for me. I was like, this is not normal. And I said, you know, as I started reading more about brain health and things, like, I think I need to incorporate a little bit more nuts and seeds. And then I felt better again.
Yeah.
And so there are some really interesting things. I think a whole food plant-based diet is amazing, but it does need to have some little bit of education so people feel optimal and that they're supplementing smartly.
We didn't have that education at that time.
We were
neither.
Learning as we went. I mean, our first smoothie
was terrible.
We had beetroot, we had all sorts of stuff. It was disgusting.
It was the worst thing we've ever had. It felt like we were drinking
I think we
dirt.
poured it down the sink. It was disgusting. We had no idea, but eventually we worked. So I really followed the Doug Graham approach, which is not something I strictly
and we don't do it now
anymore.
No.
But for the first 4 months, I was fully raw vegan, and not a raw vegan with any coconut oil, or it was fully fruit and salads.
Yeah, no oils, no nuts.
Oils.
We didn't really have nuts or anything either.
No, not really any nuts either. And yes, I agree with you. It's harder to get enough calories, but I think one of the things I've learned is that by drinking your food, you can easily overconsume. And so we were very conscious, actually, of getting enough calories. We learned that very early, and we were eating heavily a lot of bananas and dates in particular in our smoothies. That was the basis of our smoothies, to get enough calories from, because those two fruits are quite calorie dense, relatively speaking, for fruit. And then we would add mango and spinach or something else to give or blueberries, or to give a different flavour to the smoothie. And we did that for 4 months and lost a lot of weight quite quickly. Never felt, I probably felt best since eating plant-based, probably felt best eating fruit. In terms of energy and in terms of jumping out of bed and in the morning and that sort of thing probably felt best. And actually, even now, for people who are suffering from fatigue, I generally will try and coach them to eat fruit, because the digestion of fruit is so quick and easy and very low energy consumption in the digestion process. So if you have a fatigue problem, you have a lot more energy then to move your muscles about and actually expand, rather than spend your energy digesting. So, and it's not something that everyone can do. It's difficult. It is quite restrictive. And certainly in winter, getting different fruits is not always easy. But at the time, we were buying, there was, I think, 3 of us at home. We were buying 2, in your language, they're about 30-pound boxes of bananas a week, and about a 12-pound box of dates every week.
12 pounds of dates?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And then we would buy frozen mango. We would go and buy about 80 pounds of frozen mango every week and a half.
Whoa, back 80 pounds.
Yeah.
I thought I ate a lot of mango when I was in Florida, but you guys got me beat.
Yeah. But look, we've changed now. So after 4 months, we
that is impressive.
started to incorporate cooked food.
Sort of following McDougall more than...
Yeah, so we were doing actually what was, I guess, known for a while as raw till 4. So we were eating raw food until 4 in the afternoon, and then we'd have a cooked meal for dinner. And then, progressively we've incorporated more and more starches. So these days we probably follow more the McDougall model of starches. But again, for people with fatigue, I will try and start them with fruit as much as possible if they can manage that, and then transition to whole plants without oil in particular. I think oils are really, particularly for fatigue, really, obviously for heart disease, a really bad thing to be putting anywhere near your mouth.
Absolutely. I like the idea, though, the raw till 4, I think, because then you're pushing people to eat more raw foods, and then they still have that satisfaction of eating cooked foods in the evening. That's a great way to do it.
We actually really look forward to that cooked meal generally, because again, with the fruit meals, they digest quickly, so you're feeling hungry quicker. Only a few hours afterwards. So, the snacks would then be more fruit, which is perfectly fine. And again, for energy, as long as you're getting enough calories, because I 100% agree with what you said earlier, people start to feel tired. One of the ladies we just helped a few weeks back, who was already vegan, she's got a couple of young kids and homeschools them, and they were both fatigued. And then we got her to go through what she eats in a day, and they're not eating enough calories. So that's why they were fatigued.
And it's not whole foods, it's processed stuff. So there's that inflammation from that.
We got them to eat fruit, and a report back a week later was they were feeling great. So
feeling much better. Simple.
But again, it's if you're going to eat fruit in particular, you have to make sure you eat enough calories,
so that you don't feel tired.
The content of fruit is 70-80% water, 0 calories. So but the fiber and the phytonutrients, and again, the fructose is so easily converted to glucose in your digestive tract at minimal energy expense. It's the quickest way to get energy.
Right, absolutely.
The quickest and healthiest way to get energy.
Absolutely, and I agree 100%. And so when you decided to flip this over, and then you started seeing this transition of your life, and now your trajectory is going, whoop, and now you're moving this direction, and you've become passionate about it, and actually, animal activism and everything. But then you also have, I like to talk a little bit about the Food as Medicine Australia, because I think that's phenomenal. And where do you see this? Like, what is your vision for your new adventure?
Well, so we registered the business name in Australia probably 3 years ago, I think. Wow. We've had ideas of really altruistic more than anything, wanting to help people. It's not been about making money for us financially. Look, we're not multi-millionaires, but we're reasonably comfortable. And so it's not really been, money's not been our driver. It's about sharing this passion and this knowledge that we really feel everyone should know. And, you know, just like you, you've got a different way of sharing than we have. But so the concept was always to get involved in some way in health coaching. And I think what I recognised, because I'm a very stubborn individual, was that it literally took me to not be able to get out of bed to reevaluate my life effectively. And I think, like me, particularly in my age group, you know, in the 40s and 50s, it takes often something profound as being chronically ill to want to make the change. So, you know, it's easy to preach to the converted, and I think, again, for our age group, the audience for us is people who are already sick, because they are then often motivated, like I was, to make the change. So the intention with Food is Medicine is to provide a health coaching service. We haven't worked out yet really how we're going to do that. We'd like to do a lot of face-to-face live training, but we're in Perth and the audience is quite small, so it'll probably involve online coaching as well. At the moment, Food is Medicine Australia is just a Facebook page. It's an informational page.
There is some coaching.
Sharing education. We do coach people. They message us. We've got a call this afternoon with someone who contacted us through the page, and we've done a number of those now. We do all of that at the moment free of charge, and really we get pleasure from trying to help people. Yeah. But our intention, we both work full-time still, and our intention is to semi-retire in a few years' time and literally run Food is Medicine as a health coaching business. We would like to buy a reasonable sized property in the southwest of Western Australia and set up our semi-retirement home. Not home, but a lovely house, rather, with a huge fruit and veggie garden. I envisage almost an orchard of some sort. And we're looking at the idea of building a separate building with a large training kitchen and a training room to screen documentaries and lecture and educate people, and probably a few chalets on the property so that people can come and live on site.
Learn the why behind the how, before the how. So understanding why makes the how easy, you know?
So that's our long-term intention. We're a little way away, although we dabble with the idea of doing it sooner rather than later. But financially, we probably need a few more years of income behind us before we're financially ready to do that. So that's the goal.
That's the goal.
That's an amazing goal.
And that's a totally different trajectory from 5-6 years ago.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
So now between the two of you have six of the kids, six kids, and the children, 3 of them are plant-based?
2.
And 2 of them are plant-based.
2. Okay.
2. So my 2 daughters, so I have a son and 2 daughters, 25, 23, and 22. And Tony has 3 sons.
Okay.
20.
And one of them has quite an incredible recovery story as well, which is honestly how this whole thing started to get going.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? And would she mind?
So, no, not at all. So my middle daughter, her name's Alexandra. And when she was 13, she, for the whole of the year she turned 13, she was having abdominal pain and she was having diarrhea, maybe not at the same time, but she was having gastrointestinal issues. And, you know, I would say, you know, what did you eat? Or, you know, there was nothing that I could put it down to. And then that went on for about a year, and we went to the doctor because she was feeling tired and she was having abdominal pain. So they did blood tests, and the blood tests all came back terrible. Her white cells were up. Her CRP, which is the inflammatory marker, was very, very high. Her ESR was very, very high, which is another inflammatory marker. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, what is wrong with her? So because I work at the hospital, I spoke to one of the nurses there, the clinical nurses, and she sent me a referral to one of the general surgeons. And we went to see him, and he referred us to the gastroenterologist so she could have a colonoscopy, because just to rule out anything, because her symptoms were gastrointestinal. And she had that, and he came out and said he said she had ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. And I'm not sure that you can have both, but anyway, she ended up just having Crohn's disease. And even though I'd been a nurse for 25 years then, or no, 22 years then, I really didn't have a full understanding of what that was. So that was, into the research, trying to find out what the next move was. So we went back and saw him, and he was wanting to start her on the steroidal anti-inflammatories, which have awful side effects, but there was no other option. And I remember vividly asking him, what should we do? What can she eat? And he would say, food has nothing to do with this. Nothing she eats will make any difference at all. And he's a very good gastroenterologist, as are all of them. And they all believe that nothing will change her trajectory. This is what she's got. It's an autoimmune disease. We don't know what the cause is. And it's just something she's going to have to learn to live with. So we went on I think it was about 2 years of trying every drug. I know she was on some chemotherapy drugs that they put them on to suppress their immune system, which scared me because some of the side effects of those chemotherapy drugs was cancer. And she had terrible side effects to those, which I was happy about because then she stopped those. So she wasn't on them for very long. And then because she had tried everything and nothing had worked, the doctors put her on a monoclonal antibody, which is also immunosuppressant, Remicade, which is infliximab.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's an 8-weekly infusion that suppresses the symptoms of Crohn's disease so that she doesn't have any bleeding or pain or diarrhea or anything like that. So that actually helped enormously, but we were still eating animal products. There was no change in our diet. Actually, we were probably having a worse diet because she was having foods that were low in fiber, because fiber is an irritant when you have an inflammatory bowel disease.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were just every 8 weeks, we were just thanking God that we had that infusion to have every 8 weeks. By 6 or 7 weeks, she was really the symptoms would start slowly coming back, and she would need that dose of medication to suppress them again. And then once Tony and I found all this information about eating whole plant foods.
Just by the way, Ali and I were both chronically sick at the same time.
Yes.
So our household was not a fun place. We were very lucky to have a nurse look after us.
It was hard.
But the house was dead quiet. I was fast asleep in my room. Ali was asleep in her room.
She was often away from school because she just couldn't go.
Her room was right next to the toilet because she couldn't, go far from a toilet. It just was not a fun place to be,
No.
And Lizzie had to pretty much she would go to work and then come home and take care of us. So
and the 2 other kids as well.
Yeah, we had.
So it was a hard time.
Not easy.
I hope they're good to you on Mother's Day.
She's not my mother.
Well,
exactly.
okay.
Terrible.
Go ahead.
And so then once we found out all this information, we tried to speak to Ali about this. And I think a lot of her reservations with even changing what she ate was fear driven, because she thought, if I stop the medication, what it might come back. It's going to come back. She was
But she thought we were nutters. Suddenly we're buying boxes of bananas and dates.
Yeah,
and
we're not eating animal products. And she didn't have any of the information.
Weird,
So then she went to New South Wales, Sydney, to do what was it? The cordon bleu pastry. She became a pastry chef of all things.
Mm.
Yes. So she was in Sydney doing that, and we'd organised over there for her to continue her infusions, and she was going to the hospital every 8 weeks there. And then she was just not well, and she was always ringing me up saying, I feel terrible and I feel tired. And she came home for the break between the first and the second course, and I said to her, look, can we just try? You don't have to do anything else. Just give up the dairy, all dairy products. I said, there's lots of alternatives, and see how you feel. I said, if you feel the same, then nothing gained, nothing lost. Anyway, she agreed to do that. And over the next few weeks, she did say that she felt better. And so I was like, well, this is good. She's at least decided to stick with no dairy. And then I went over there between the break between the second and the third course and spent a week with her. And we ended up, she agreed to watch an animal agriculture documentary called Earthlings. I don't know if you've heard of that one. And after we watched that, she was crying and she was like, she was going to go vegan. So not for her health. There was nothing we could do to convince her, but that documentary, that was it. She said, I can't do this to the animals anymore. So she was an overnight vegan. And she actually she didn't go whole food plant-based like we were, but she slowly started introducing more whole foods. And then she came back home after she finished her course, and she was eating what we were eating because she was living at home, and she was just feeling better and better and better, but she was still having the infusions.
Which was making her sick.
Yes, because
toxic, right?
Her body's trying to clear itself with all this nice food she's eating, and then every 8 weeks we're infusing
poison,
toxic drugs into her system. And so Tony and I spoke to her one night and said, look, would you consider giving it up? And she was very scared. She was like, what if I get sick again? So we went and saw the gastroenterologist and we said, can we do this? And he said, let's do a colonoscopy and have a look. So we had a look, no sign of any disease. And she'd had lots of colonoscopies, lots of iron infusions, and there had never, ever not been disease there. And so there was no sign. Everything had healed. And so he said, if you want to try it, you can. And he assured us that if it came back, she could go back on the drugs. So she was happy to try not having the drugs. And she just got better and better and better and better and better. And now she has no symptoms.
She's 23 now.
Yeah. So that was when she was 19.
So it's 4 years now. And now she goes to the gym. She runs around the lake. She never worries where the toilet is.
And that appointment with the gastroenterologist, that was the last day we saw him. We have never been back.
Hang on. You saw him recently because Lizzie still works at the hospital where this guy works.
But I didn't see him as a patient. I worked there and he just said hello, but didn't ask how she was or anything. Yeah. But she has no more blood tests. Her bloods are perfect. Her inflammatory markers are within normal ranges.
But she was 13 at diagnosis.
And 19 when she changed. So she'd had it for 6.
For 6 years. And the GI doctor didn't ask? Really?
Nothing.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Pretty sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the part that, isn't that the frustrating part, is that you have this glaring patients that are just, getting better and not questioning and saying, well, what are you doing? But
he's not ever rung us to say, how's everything going? Like nothing.
I guess, and this is not to pick on doctors because you're a doctor, right?
I get all these conversations revolve around us being poor.
But in defense, earlier you said you're treating 30 or something patients a day. There's just not, you don't have time. Yeah. The system doesn't allow you the time. Yeah. To inquire upon someone's health in a follow-up. You know, it's a different business model, right? So
it is. It's a very I don't know how it is in the Australia, but in the US,
I think it's modelled on your system.
Very similar.
I'm sorry. I'm so very sorry.
Yeah, so are we.
Very similar.
It's do you have no socialized medicine? So it's all private.
No, it's social system. Yeah.
You do have a social system?
Yeah. We have a Medicare system.
Public health.
Taxpayer-funded public health. Yeah.
So everyone has some type of basic coverage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so everyone is a Medicare patient. Yeah, you don't have that. That's right. I think ours is a little bit better, actually.
Yeah.
But as far as doctor's visits go, if you make an appointment with your GP, you get 5 to 10 minutes. That's it.
Wow.
And some GPs bulk bill, which means they don't charge, so it's just charged to the Medicare,
to the government.
But most doctors have a additional cost on top of that, so you have to pay.
It's like a copay or something.
Yeah.
And we have private health insurance then on top of that.
I see.
People like us who are, I guess, in the high income bracket, it costs us. It's probably cheap for you guys, but we pay, I think it's 2 or 2.5% of our taxable income for the Medicare the government health system
that we don't use anymore.
That we never use, and then on top of that, because we're high income earners, I have to pay about another 2% of my income, taxable income, in a further tax if I don't take private medical insurance.
Yeah.
So so we've gone and got some very cheap private hospital insurance
that we will never use
because it's cheaper than paying the tax. And we'll never use a hospital insurance, but it's
unless we have an accident or something,
like some type of catastrophic.
It's good for everyone else that's eating the sad diet, right? So we're subsidising everyone that's eating a sad diet who needs to use the hospital.
Geez Louise.
Frustrating.
And the frustrating part is, I don't know, I'm assuming it's similar, but in America, the rate of suicide in physicians is the highest of any profession.
I don't know.
Don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I would assume it's probably similar, just because of the nature of medicine. And it's really unfortunate because now we're getting burnout, right? So we've taken away the patient's and the physician's ability to create a great relationship because of time. And then we have the other factors of, it's a very litigious society in the U.S. So we have, the threat of lawsuits and malpractice. And so we order more tests and start more medicines and follow all these guidelines that aren't necessarily helpful.
Yeah.
He's always rushing. And then we have the electronic medical system, which they've introduced the requirements, which will fine physicians if you don't meet certain criteria in a timely manner, which was ridiculous because it was set up so horribly. It's a disaster. But now you have this, you see physicians there's such a lack of primary care physicians. Right? I'm a family medicine doc. There's this huge flat line, there's just not enough of us. The population continues to grow, but we're like this. But the administration is like this. When you look at the graphs, it's just taking off. But the doctors are like this. So now you have all this added, those people have salaries. Who's making the money to pay them? It's going to be the doers, the worker bees, the doctors who are bringing in the patients. That's that's the road, the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult situation. And what you'll see though, when you see physicians who move into lifestyle medicine, which is basically what I like to say what I do now is family and lifestyle medicine, there's a reawakening of that desire to help people and why you went into medicine and the decade of medical school and all the other stuff that you go through. And it's it's a revitalization and that burnout. And you're just so eager to share that message with whomever you can. So that's really fun to talk to patients, to physicians about. And that is, when I say I do lifestyle medicine, people are like, what's lifestyle medicine? I said, well, it's a way to get out of burnout. And they're like, what? And so it's what are you doing? I was like, can you make money doing that? I was like, well, it's not easy, but yeah, you can survive. You can make your living. You just have to do things differently. And you might have to work a little bit in a different way of doing stuff.
Differently. That's right.
Yeah. It's a different way. And for sure.
Laurie, how pleasurable is it to actually help somebody rather than just prescribe a tablet in 5 minutes?
You changed their whole life.
Even though we're not doctors, we've helped quite a number of people now, and it's just such a pleasurable experience to know that we've affected their direction in their lives, for the better usually. So
I've come up with a term. Now remember where you heard this. It's called Veggie Crack. Okay, this is what it is. This is what it is. So you help someone. It's a little dopamine hit. It's your brain goes, I like it. Do it again.
Really.
And then you get a little bit more. So I tell someone to eat their veggies, I get a little hit. So it's called Veggie Crack. I'm gonna hashtag that on a t-shirt.
I'm addicted to Veggie Crack.
Veggie Crack. I'm telling you. I keep telling me, listen, I need you to eat more vegetables so you'll get better, so I'll feel good. Keep going, please. Come on. It's all about me. Jeez. But yeah, it's a wonderful thing. I had a patient on my telemedicine where I'm doing now, and I just saw the mom a few days ago for a separate issue, and she's like, do you remember that little girl that you helped change her diet? And she was an 8-year-old who had severe eczema since infancy. just horrendous and had seen multiple physicians and specialists and basically run out of options, had called me. And I was like, well, let's talk about milk, especially dairy, with that. And they heeded my advice, and within 3 weeks, 100% resolution. And now it's been about 6 months later, and mom's telling me she's still doing phenomenal. And she goes, and she tells everybody that she is not a cow and she's a human and she doesn't need milk. I was like, go girl.
Exactly.
So you see this little girl go from being ill and afraid to go to school and embarrassed to this. I mean, that's just one of the more recent
person, right?
Yeah. Or you'll see someone come in, like a patient that was in their 20s and untreated diabetes, and in 90 days they, basically phenomenally change their diet and they get better. And they go, I used to be afraid to come to doctors, but now I'm so excited to tell you because I'm getting better. I was like, and guess what? You're not going to need to see me anymore.
Exactly.
I love the one. We had a guy one day come around to service our oven, and he had diabetes, and I was telling him how many potatoes we have, because we love, my favourite meal for dinner is chips. We have white potatoes. I usually peel. We often make Dr. Gregor's savoury spice mix, and we dust them, toss the uncooked chips in a bowl with the spice mix, and lay them out on parchment paper, as you would call it, or baking paper. And we turn the oven to, I think, 400 Fahrenheit in your language, maximum oven temperature. And 35, 40 minutes later, we've got crispy chips. No oil, no salt. And yesterday I made a big batch of chili sauce. And just literally eat chips and sauce, sometimes with lettuce cups, sometimes with a coleslaw or a salad earlier. And that's my favourite meal. And this guy, the guy who came to service the oven, I was telling, it's really important because I've got to cook my chips, right? And he said, I wish I could eat potatoes. I've got diabetes. I can't eat potatoes. They're the enemy. And I started trying to explain it to him. And of course, it's totally the opposite from what his doctor says, because it's the sugar that's the problem and the carbs are the problem. And when I was telling him that it was actually fat that's the problem, he thought I was just loopy, and I'm not a doctor, so what would I know? So that's the sad part about diabetics. I think they're scared of rice and potatoes and all these really healthful foods.
Yeah, it's so sad.
Which is really sad. The foods that would actually heal them.
It is. But we got to go back to the chips. Do you guys have an air fryer?
No, we don't. Well, you don't need one. If you've got an oven at home, you just do what we see. That's an air
fryer. That's a massive one.
Turn the fan on in the oven and it does the same thing.
I have a little smart oven, so it does 13 functions. And we just got it about a month ago. But it takes, because I love potatoes as well, and sweet potatoes and white potatoes, whatever. And but this one cuts it from 45 minutes to 16 minutes.
Wow.
Okay.
That is something to think about. And they get nice and crispy, and they're delish. And have you ever heard of a taquito?
No.
Oh my, you guys have got to try this. You got some paper? We're going to share this with the audience right now. All right.
I'll get some.
Have you ever been to the U.S.?
I have, yes, for work.
Okay. Yeah. Have you been to the Southwest?
No.
Texas, New Mexico?
No.
Okay.
I've been to California.
Okay. Well, that's a different country.
Definitely going sometime soon.
Okay. So I grew up in New Mexico. This is New Mexico is Mexican, Hispanic, lots of flavors of Mexican food.
Yeah.
And they make Tex-Mex, but there's these things called taquitos. You have corn tortillas there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you take lentils.
It's hard to find them without oil, though, Laurie.
Really?
But we can. We buy them online usually. Yeah, it's really hard.
I can get mine at the store with no oil pretty easy.
Yeah, I think you've got a lot easier to get oil fresh. Yeah, we don't.
For sure. That's even at Walmart. Wow.
Yeah, I
know.
No.
Can't find them here.
I got to buy them online.
I'm sorry. Well, get them online. This will be good.
I will.
But they're not fried ones. They're the regular ones that come, in package.
Yeah.
Rounds. Okay, great. So then you take lentils, and I'll send you all the specific. But I think, I'll tell you the smaller one. Half a cup of lentils, and you cook it, or cook a cup, whatever you like. I took half a cup of walnuts, blend them up in a little food processor. Okay, that's the chunky one. I'm going to make this lentil walnut meat. You can put mushroom if you want. Don't have to, but forever. You get fire roasted tomatoes. You can get them in a can, like the regular ounce can. I take half of that can. And then in Hatch, New Mexico, they make Hatch chilies. Can you get the little can of Hatch chilies or chilies?
No,
Green
but
chili?
I have heard of Hatch chilies. I haven't seen them here.
Are
they a different flavour from normal chili? Is that special?
Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get your address, and I'm going to send you some stuff. I'm going to send you some green chilies, and I'm going to send you the most amazing enchilada sauce. Have you ever made enchiladas? Oh, you people are just, you're going to love this. Yeah. I'm sending you a care package.
I love spicy. Lizzie's not so big on the spice.
I like spice, but not so it burns my head off.
This is not hot. This is just enough flavor to like,
Yeah, that's what I like. Yeah.
Okay, so you take a little bit of, I think about a tablespoon of the chilies, and you blend those up with the fire, so just so they're, a little bit more blended up. Then you put couple of teaspoons of chili powder, a couple of teaspoons of cumin, a little black pepper if you like. And then you mix that all up, right? So you're mixing it up, and I put it back through the food processor, so it's kind of a meaty texture. And I put it back in the pan, right? And just to kind of burn off the water, so it's not as wet.
Yeah.
And then you take the corn tortilla, and you take a little tube of that meat, and you maybe 2 tablespoons worth, maybe 3. You roll it, and you put it in. You can put it in your oven. I put it in the air fryer because it's so much faster. It's like 6 minutes. It takes me about 22 in the oven at 350, whatever that converts to.
You just put it in a dish.
Yeah, I just put on a cookie sheet, a plain baking sheet, and I roll it, and they're like little tubes, right? They're like little rolled up corn tortillas, and we call them taquitos. And you cook them. You dip them
in the enchilada sauce.
Oh, you don't have to do the enchilada. But you dip them in. I use guacamole or salsa, but the enchilada sauce I'm going to send to you is from my hometown where I grew up. Yes, it's a powder, completely plant-based. You add water, and then you can make that same meat if you want, or you can just put beans in it and onions and whatever you want to put inside your enchiladas. Have you had enchiladas?
I have. We have Mexican restaurants.
Okay,
here, so.
That's different.
But,
I'm gonna send you step-by-step instructions. So this enchilada sauce, I don't know how to describe it. I refuse to eat any other enchiladas. I grew up on this stuff since I was a small child.
Oh my gosh, it sounds amazing.
I'm so sending you a care package.
I'm
sorry for the rest of the audience. Y'all aren't getting it, but these two are getting it. This is what I'm sending you. Oh,
I'm just thinking Australian customs will bust you for sending in food drugs to us or something.
No, they won't.
If they take in Twinkies from the U.S., they better take my time.
Exactly.
But I'll send you some Hatch chilies, and I'm going to send you my enchilada sauce.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Wow.
You guys are going to be, you're going to be like, when's their next shipment? I'm like, you're going to be on regular order.
We'll send you money, and you can send us actually.
We'll bring in sea containers.
This is absolutely, I'm so excited for you to try that. It's called El Monterey.
We just shared Chuck, what's his name?
I'm not sure.
Chuck Underwood. I'm not sure. He's an American guy.
I know who he is.
Yeah. I think he's brand new vegan, he calls himself. Facebook, and he shares recipes. And he just shared cauliflower taco meat one, which we reshared because we've been making that for a while. And it's quite similar, I think, to what you're saying.
It's got cauliflower and mushrooms and walnuts and kale all blended together, and then you mix like spices and tamari and things like that.
And you bake it in the oven and dry it out, and then you have it in a taco shell.
With rice.
But this one has passed all the omnivore tests. I've fed this to several omnivores, and they're like, what is this?
What is this?
What is this that you've created, you little healthy vegan? Like, well, you can't eat healthy and tasty. And that it's many of my goals is to just make good food so people start going, okay, this is interesting, and if I can feel better, let's give it a shot.
That's absolutely. Right.
Actually, half of my follow-up appointments with my plant-based patients that I'm converting are recipes. We talk about.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's really funny. I was like, all
As
right.
soon as you make it tasty for them,
it's easier.
Because let's face it, when you eat, animal products,
Right.
you're usually flavouring them up with all these sauces
Spices.
that you're just talking about. So, and that's what makes the animal products taste nice. If you ate the animal products on their own, it doesn't taste nice.
Right.
It's the flavourings. And so when you show people that you can put these flavourings on chickpeas or potatoes or
Lentils
or cauliflower or nuts, it's like, oh, wow, and suddenly the texture and the other things become less important because it's a flavour. And let's face it, the foods that we serve up are the most colourful, eye-catching foods. And everyone says, oh, wow.
What do you
got?
Why can't I have that?
So,
yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And, our foods are the ones that get eaten first because they look the most attractive.
Yeah.
They taste good.
For a reason.
Yeah.
That's why we have colour receptors in our eyes.
Exactly.
Imagine that.
I know, it's
funny,
crazy. But you know how before you were talking about, patients making you feel like the Veggie Crack, making you come back and feel good. I wanted to tell you, every time we hear a story, whether it's on a podcast or a story or read it on Facebook or Forks Over Knives success stories, we cry. Like, we're so happy for those people.
Yeah.
And the story that you had on your podcast with Jim Bella, oh my goodness. I have told so many people about his story. We were literally bawling listening to that. Just like tissues, crying, and Tony as well. Like, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And that's the first time he had shared his story like that. And I was not expecting that, actually. So he was one of like a series of diabetes stories that I was sharing. And I was thinking, 20 minutes. But then I was like, oh
It
my
was amazing.
God, you almost died. You had 26 surgeries. What?
Yeah.
I know. It was just amazing. And like, I didn't want it to end. Like, you said it was it went for so long and I just couldn't get enough because it just makes you feel so happy for him.
Super inspiring.
That he found it, and maybe someone else will find it because they listen to his story. And
yeah, absolutely.
And that's why, like your podcasts and several others that we follow,
absolutely.
They're just so inspiring because again, it's like when I was sick, I was when I was awake enough, I was searching for what is wrong with me, how do I get well, and there probably was stuff like this, but I didn't know where to go and find it.
You didn't know it existed to look for it.
So had I stumbled on one of your podcasts or something, it would have helped me so much earlier. It's not so easy to find this unless you know where to go looking.
Right.
And I certainly wasn't typing in plant-based anything.
No.
So,
you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. So we love to share your story, your interviews, and Corinne Nidja, who we've done a podcast with some while ago as well. She shares stories of recovery stories, and they're just so inspiring.
Yeah.
And, for people that are sick, and again, for us, that's probably our audience as well. When you hear these stories, we can tell you all about the nutrition and the science. When you hear a story like that, and if you've got something in common with that person, it resonates, and you think, well, if he can do it or she can do it, maybe I can do it. And, it just opens up the Pandora's box. So, so keep doing these. These are great.
Yeah.
You're doing amazing things.
Thank you so much. There was a few lapses in weeks, but I'm back on my schedule. Things get a little crazy, but it's no excuse. I still got to do it. But yeah, it's a really fun thing to do. The reason I started doing them was because I was getting tired of sharing the same stories. Like, all right, I'm going to just get these down and send people to the podcast to listen. But then it became an opportunity to even, talk to the Dr. Bernards and the Dr. Esselstyn. And the one I spoke to Dr. Esselstyn, it was so funny. I don't know if you guys, the audience, if you're just stumbling across this, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, he wrote a book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. You got to check it out. He's amazing. Cleveland Clinic, phenomenal human, gold medalist back in the 50s. Just really amazing. Anyways. I'm sitting here talking to Anne and Dr. Esselstyn and his wife, and she's in the background. I'm doing the videos before I was videoing them, though. I hadn't discovered the Zoom technology. I was still doing some Skype. And Dr. Esselstyn's sitting there talking to me, and the next thing I know is it's like at 5 o'clock, and there's a cuckoo clock.
Oh, I think I remember that.
You hear that? He's like, he starts giggling because you never had that happen before. I said, no, but that's so funny. I'm keeping it in.
Yeah, I remember.
So funny. And I don't know, just why that just cracks me up. But anyway, easy.
I like it when Anne's usually in the background clattering pots and pans around or something and cooking something up.
And that was a Campbell too. And then Dr. Campbell's wife is telling him, we gotta go, and she's like, "Ooh, I gotta go." I'm like, okay. That's so funny. Oh my goodness. But yeah, absolutely. But oh my gosh, I know I've kept you guys, bless your hearts. I do always like to ask a question at the end. If you ever could give one question, or one piece of advice to someone who's, let's say, teetering, and they're like, I don't know. I hear these stories, but I don't know if it's for me. What bit of advice do you give to someone or the people that you meet and come across that are kind of new to this whole plant-based way of eating?
I think for us, it's usually around educate yourself. I mean, we can, and we often do tell people that we almost brain download on them with all the information we've learned. It's hard to actually hold back sometimes, but generally, we will refer them to some of the excellent documentaries because it's just such an easy, non-confrontational way to learn, and it usually they're interesting enough to open that Pandora's box usually for people to start doing their own research. And I think, hearing it from people like you or us is one thing, but when people actually do their own research and it starts locking its way in their brain cells, then they might take some action because, we can give them the information, but we can't do the actions.
They have to take responsibility for themselves because, instead of outsourcing it to all these other people. But also, I think the thing we've been starting to tell people is just try it. Just try it for a month. You have nothing to lose, and if you don't like it, you can always go back. But just try it for a month and see. And we can help you. We can give you recipes, and you've got nothing to lose except getting your health back, your disease.
And I think, so as I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but you get new taste buds every 21 days. So the flavors that you used to think you liked 22 days ago suddenly don't taste good anymore.
And the flavors you thought were yuck.
And the flavors that if you can, as Dr. Goldhammer says, if you can get through the plain swill for 21 days, suddenly that's what you crave and you really like. So we think a month is a good time for people to try, and we try and provide as much information and guidance and coaching and recipes, and because it's important, as you say, it's like, okay, well, I've heard all your science now, but what do I actually eat? Yeah. So, the other piece of advice is clean your kitchen out, get rid of all the junk food, all the animal products.
There's no temptation.
Throw it in the rubbish bin. Don't even give it to your enemies because it'll kill them too. Put it in. We filled our wheelie bin here, our trash bin here with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars of what we used to call food.
A lot of it was sitting in there for goodness knows how long with expiry dates because, you just put things in there.
But then we filled our kitchen with all the good foods so that when we were hungry, that's what we had to eat. And
80 pounds of mango.
Yeah, that's right. 80 pounds of mango.
Exactly. What more do you want? And a blender. You got smoothies.
Not 80 pounds.
But
I love.
So I think that's important as well. Take the temptations away. Set yourself up for success.
And try it for a month.
And at the end of the day, hopefully in our case, we're going to live to 150 or something, and
at least
marathons at 100. So
what's a new 20?
What's a month out of 100 years of life? It's
exactly.
Even if you're only planning to live to 60, a month is a very small investment.
Right.
And
60's way too.
What do you got to lose? Whoever died from eating too many fruit and veg, right?
Exactly. You guys are so right on. I always say I'm not going to send an alcoholic to a bar. So why would I?
Yeah.
Make yourself, your home is your safe zone, right?
Yeah.
You're exactly right. Absolutely. And I always tell them on that kind of same line is like, be the first person in 7 years to prove me wrong.
Exactly.
Please
Try.
have a go.
Challenge.
Try to prove me wrong. And when you do, I don't know what I'll do, but I'll do
something.
I'll buy you a new car.
I'll buy you. There you go. I'll give you my clunker. How about that?
You won't need to because they won't prove you wrong.
They're not going to prove me wrong. Absolutely. I always tell people too, because we have a lot of very passionate Americans and they love vets, since I'm a vet because I was in the Air Force. I was like, listen, I went and spent 4.5, almost 5 months in the Middle East in the desert. For that long, you can eat fruits and vegetables for a month.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you've got that.
Yeah, to pull that one out. Yeah,
what can they say? They can't say anything to that.
I think what's interesting is the initial thought is that's like going to prison, right? But after a month of eating this way, because, I mean, that was the other thing, was I never went near the kitchen. Lizzie had to cook the food because I never got near the kitchen. Now it's a fight for who's in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And when I'm cooking, she clears out because there's too many arguments otherwise. And you know, I really enjoy cooking the food now. I don't do it as much as Lizzie because I work a longer day usually, but you know, I really enjoy creating sauces. I make my own jalapenos, make pickled onions. I
know what's
make
in
all
them,
sorts of different sauces and curry powders and curry pastes and spice mixes and so easy. And particularly when there's no oil involved, the dishwashing is cold water, no dishwashing liquid. It's just so easy and
easy.
pleasurable. And I know what's in my food then. And so, you know, we went out to a movie screening at a vegan event last night, and there was food provided, but we took our own Mexican beans and rice and jalapenos and avocado just to make sure there's no oil. We're very
But he did do it
particular.
oil-free for us.
Yeah, we're educating people in Perth about the oil thing.
Yeah,
they don't
that's
always
awesome.
get that. So.
How big is Perth?
It's about probably around 1.25 million people, so quite small. Yeah, well, it's probably about the 4th largest city in Australia, maybe 5th, after Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane.
And Adelaide.
No, I think Perth's probably bigger than Adelaide. So maybe the 4th biggest city. But it's the most remote city in the world, I think, or remote capital city in the world.
Away from other cities.
Because even for us to go to like Melbourne or Sydney is about a 4-hour plane ride.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Adelaide's the closest capital city to us, and that's about 2.5-hour plane ride.
A plane ride. Wow.
Yeah. Jet plane.
Wow.
And Brisbane's about 5 hours.
Yeah, I go to Brisbane regularly for work, and that's actually coming home against the wind. It's a 5.5-hour trip.
Yeah, it's a long way.
Wow. That's like flying from Florida to Seattle.
Yeah,
Cross country.
Yeah.
Jeez. But that's still 1 million people. That means you have some decent resources, I would hope. Right?
It's a modern city.
But vegan, there's probably are there very many vegan restaurants and stuff?
Yes, there's
more than there was when we started. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's cool. Like everywhere, I think, you know, like
vegan's easy. It's the oil-free vegan.
Oil-free is very hard.
Very hard.
Yeah.
They look at us like, what?
There's a growing number of vegan cafes and restaurants. What we've noticed is even at the supermarkets, now there are vegan sections in the supermarkets, whereas 5 years ago there was not.
And restaurants have like a vegan menu for like lots of options. Yeah, not just one vegan meal, like a whole menu for the vegan.
Right. So it's growing enormously.
It is growing, but it's just the oil.
The oil thing is a problem for us, so we don't eat out very much.
Yeah, I know the oil thing.
But that's okay.
Yeah, that is okay.
But we're educating people as we go. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. This is phenomenal. There's Susie Cameron, whose husband was the director for, what was that movie? The big one, Avatar. And the Titanic and stuff. They have a website. It's called OMD. She wrote a book one meal per day, I believe. And it's a restaurant initiative. You guys should check out their website.
Okay.
And I can email it to you too.
Sure.
And they have a lot of resources that you can download and give to people. They even have a letter that you can give to your favorite restaurant and say it's a whole food plant-based diet type thing, and this is why we're doing it. And I spoke to one of their folks. They're in California. Really cool. I think that might be something that would add to your initiative.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, everyone, for listening. But thank you for being such a wonderful and delightful guest.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Lovely to meet you and talk to you face to face.
Yeah,
absolutely. And someday in person. You have always somewhere to stay. If you're ever in the U.S., you come see me.
Oh my gosh,
we're coming for the Mexican food.
Oh, dude, I'm on it. I'm going to be cooking for you.
We might need to pack our extra suitcase to bring the stash of chilies and sauce mixes back.
I'm going to make them mail it to you. This is you have no idea. I'm just opening up a box of
Can't wait.
We're looking forward to it.
Oh my goodness. Well, just one. Thank you again.
Thank you, Laurie.
Lovely.
Thanks so much.
Bye for now.
Hold on.